Both films feature Betty Ross as the love interest, played by Jennifer Connelly in the '03 film and by the daughter of Aerosmith's Steven Tyler in the '08 film. Once again, the '03 film does something with a character that distances us from the story. Here, Betty is played as Bruce's irritated ex-girlfriend who left him because he was dull and boring.
Just a byproduct of my inexplicable obsession with emotionally distant men. They'll get over us.
Good for you.
Despite this, she wants to help Bruce through his monster ordeal for some reason. Ultimately, she's forced into the background while her father and the character Talbot do horrible things to Banner. For one thing, it would have been better if Betty was still in a relationship with Bruce. It would have added another dimension to her character and better explain her curiosity to solve Bruce's problems, and we wouldn't be as disconnected from her. Secondly, Betty should have been the character we're made to identify with, and she's the only character in the film who isn't an asshole and doesn't have mental illness. Unfortunately, this potential is taken away with filler scene number 2, when we're told about some dream where she imagines herself as a child being smothered by Bruce. This concept detracts from her character as we see that she's almost as screwed up and withdrawn as Bruce. Also, the dream feels very unnatural and out of place in the context of the scene. Imagine you're getting intimate with your girlfriend and she interrupts by saying she thinks you're going to kill her. Not exactly a turn-on, unless you're into that sort of thing. And just in case you're not convinced of how little emotional connection there is to her, watch this part.
Both of it. Meantime, if he does anything but sit there in that chair, I'm gonna turn on the juice and he'll be incinerated immediately.
That's how you react to your dad saying he's going to murder your boyfriend? Okay. This is heavily contrasted in the '08 film.
I know you're in there! General, please! Dad!
They weren't even trying to kill Banner in that scene. We're made to see Bruce's journey through her eyes. It's her that sees the Hulk as a part of Bruce, and she helps to reinforce the idea that the monster is not an evil presence and that it, being a part of Bruce, has the potential to help others. Her relationship with Bruce is actually developed pretty well, and once again, we don't have to be told about their relationship, we see it. Despite my not being the biggest fan of her, Liv Tyler plays off Edward Norton quite well. When we see Betty discover that Bruce is still alive, we root for them, and we're relieved when they're given some moments of happiness with one another. It seems the Marvel Cinematic Universe films can only make good love stories when the two characters already know each other. Bruce and Betty is so much better than a woman who falls in love with a man because he's buff, or a woman who falls in love with a man because of reasons. The villains are one of the few cases where the '03 film excels over the '08 film. With one exception, Josh Lucas's character Talbot, who wants to force Bruce to use his research to violent ends and make money. I hate this character. Yeah, I get we're supposed to hate him, but I hate the existence of this character. He's a member of a long line of characters that I call assholes for the sake of assholes. Characters that are so one-dimensional they border on comical. Some good examples are Commander Locke from the Matrix series and that greedy weasel from Avatar.
There is a hair's breadth between friendly offer and hostile takeover.
We're doing the basic science for everyone.
You know, someday I'm gonna write a book. And I'm gonna call it When Stupid Ideals Happen to Smart, Penniless Scientists. In the meantime, Bruce, you will be hearing from me.
Despite the film purporting to be a three-dimensional telling of a character's psyche, we're given this character that's stuck firmly in one dimension. And it wouldn't be so bad if this character only had a minor role, but whole plot points are devoted to his crap. Look at how this idiot tries to get Banner to transform into the Hulk.
Only got me to play with now that Betty's dumped you and gone back to Berkeley. You're lying. You know, for me, this is a win-win situation. You turn green and all these guys come in and kill you, and I perform the autopsy. You don't, and I mop the floor with you, and maybe by accident go too far and break your neck. Bad science, maybe, but personally gratifying. So long, big boy.
That unintentionally funny death scene brings me to a side note. The comic panel transitions. Most people like them or hate them. I hate them. A special visual style is fine if it services the story, not if it becomes a distraction. It's as if Ang Lee didn't know which character he wanted us to look at, so why not make us look at both? Sometimes he even shows the same character from two different angles, which is just dumb. You're not making 24. Also, there's the third filler scene where they spend a lot of time showing Bruce put into an underground base, and it consists of nothing but these transitions. The main villain in the '03 film is Bruce's father, David, who was put in prison for 30 years after he killed his wife and blew up a base. Just 30 years? When he gets out, he finds his son and starts down a path of insanity featuring mutated dogs and absorbing powers. Although this character entails a lot of plot contrivances and silly things like a mutated poodle, I think he's portrayed very well by Nick Nolte. His best scene happens after he gets absorbing powers and is arrested. Eventually he talks Betty into getting her father to let him speak with Bruce. Once again, plot contrivances. General Ross has no reason to grant David Banner's request, since he tried to kill his daughter and has caused so much chaos for the last 30 years. On a side note, it's a bit of a missed opportunity that the older versions of these bitter enemies never interact directly. Anyway, David gives this speech to Bruce.
Stop! Stop! What? Stop! What? Think of all those men out there in their uniforms, barking and swallowing orders, inflicting their petty rule over the entire globe. Think of all the harm they've done to you, to me, to humanity. And know this, that we can make them and their flags and their anthems and their governments disappear in a flash. You and me.
After everything David has been through because of the military, being forced to experiment on himself, conceiving a mutated son, being forced to accidentally kill his wife, and losing any semblance of humanity, he's brought down to a final solution of absorbing Hulk's powers and becoming a monster that will reshape the world how he wants it. It's an interesting concept, and the resulting fight between Hulk and Absorbing Man is pretty good. Unfortunately, it's kind of too little too late for the film. In the '08 film, we have Emil Blonsky, an aging soldier who wants to be physically invulnerable. He allows General Ross to experiment on him to give him physical strength to fight the Hulk. But as the film progresses, he just seems to want more and more strength, leading to a point where he's willing to mutate into a giant monster called the Abomination. We're not really given a good motivation for his character, and it seems that the lengths he's willing to go to get strong are too unrealistic. I mean, he's so obsessed with being strong that he'll turn himself into a gigantic freak. Also, there's no real connection between Blonsky and Banner as characters, just the differing perspectives of soldier and scientist. He seems to be in the movie just to give something for Hulk to fight at the end.
Give me a real fight.
Tim Roth does what he can with the role. The climactic battle between Blonsky and the Hulk is actually pretty good, if a bit long. We do have some fun moments with it.
Any last words? Hulk! Smash!
But the ultimate point of the scene is that Hulk is just on the edge of killing Blonsky after he's defeated. After Betty shouts for him to stop, he does. She doesn't want Bruce to cross the line and feel guilty for having taken a life. This act completes Banner's arc as he's able to control the Hulk just enough to prevent him from killing, and he realizes that in some ways he is the Hulk. General Ross is also done better in the '03 film. In the '08 film, he was someone who charged Banner with creating some kind of radiation resistance, which was secretly about him making a new super soldier serum. After the accident, Ross doesn't go after Banner because of the potential danger to people, but because he both wants to cover up his mistake and he wants to experiment on him. He goes so far as to say,
"As far as I'm concerned, that man's whole body is property of the U.S. Army."
Like with Blonsky, we're not given a good motivation for why he would be this way, so extreme. There was a deleted scene that explored him better where he says Banner trying to cure himself would be like the early humans discarding fire after they discover it. While he's not portrayed as completely one-dimensional, he does show genuine concern for his daughter. He's rather poorly adapted here overall. Sam Elliott's General Ross is shown as someone showing deep regret after inadvertently causing all the events in the film. While he is portrayed as an overprotective father to Betty, and he seems a bit too willing to murder Bruce, the film shows that he's mostly doing it for a greater good. After Hulk gets loose, he wants to stop him not because he wants to experiment or control him, like all the other bad guys in this section, but because he presents a danger to innocent people. In fact, this becomes a bit of a double-edged sword for the film, as it contributes to the disconnected moral ambiguity of Bruce. At first we're rooting for Bruce because he's escaping the horrible things done to him. But when he starts devastating San Francisco, we almost want to root for the military. Poor Sam Elliott, it seems like he can never be in a good comic book film. Before we finish up, let's talk about the Incredible Hulk's place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First of all, I like the film more than its three successors, Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America. Partly because, like with the first Iron Man film, this film was less concerned with building up an Avengers film and more concerned with telling its own story. It doesn't assume we know all the background. Despite some allusions to the other films, it doesn't build up the later film until the end. We're given a scene where Tony Stark walks into a bar to tell the disgraced General Ross about the Avengers initiative. It seems like they were partly setting up an Incredible Hulk 2 with this, where we'd have General Ross using Stark's technology to capture the Hulk and convince Banner to be a part of the Avengers. Of course, the bad guy would be Dr. Stern, the aforementioned Mr. Blue, who was shown turning into the Hulk villain, the Leader, before the fight with Blonsky. Unfortunately, because the '08 film wasn't the hit Marvel thought it would be, a sequel to this Hulk was scrapped, and the Leader's fate was explained in a tie-in comic, and Stark's conversation with Ross was retconned in a DVD extra. Turns out Stark was in there to talk to Ross about letting Blonsky join the Avengers, and Agent Coulson had the great idea of sending Stark in there to annoy Ross to the point of saying no. What a cop-out. As I said, I don't think either of these films is great. One film had lofty goals of elevating the superhero genre, but it failed in basic storytelling and character establishment. I didn't connect to any of the characters, the pacing was terrible, and there were times where I didn't know who to root for. The other film excelled in the basics of character and storytelling, telling a great deal with just the visuals, but it never rises beyond telling a simple action story, and is thus just as forgotten as its predecessor. Ang Lee, in an interview for Life of Pi, where he cites Hulk as the film where he learned to manage CGI, lamented that he didn't make the film fun. While The Incredible Hulk was serious and had some real tragedy, you did have that sense of fun. For me, though, the problem with Hulk '03 is not that it didn't have wall-to-wall action, a lot of Hulk smash, it had plenty of that, or a sense of fun. The problem was it didn't connect to the audience. Now, there are a lot of people who go to bat for this film. Some even go so far as lamenting modern audiences' poor attention span or desire for mediocrity, and saying that the film is beyond all that. Some even compare it to Nolan's Batman in its ambition, saying, why are we praising Nolan but not Lee for doing the same thing years earlier? But they didn't do the same thing. Bruce Wayne was a character we could like and connect to. Banner's Banner was not. Hulk is better than films like Catwoman, Elektra, and Batman and Robin, but it's nowhere near as good as even the weakest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. Based on the audience reaction to these films, it seems a Hulk movie is not something people really want to see. Sure, fans of the comics and the TV show probably do, but the average moviegoer has little desire of seeing a big green monster jumping around and doing things. It's kind of a B-movie idea. Though, I think it's even more than that. It's that the main protagonist is two people. People who can never, or almost never, interact, and they're made to do different things. One of them can't talk, at least not often, and is just a walking disaster area. The other is a scientist who can rarely jump into the action without turning into the other guy. The result is quite a bit of disconnect. 2008's The Incredible Hulk does manage to find a better balance, and I think if most of the deleted scenes had been left in, we may have had as good a Hulk movie as we could possibly get. That said, I think it's better than the '03 film, and I think it's a decent film overall. Well, that's it for this edition of Video Boys reviewing Avengers stuff. So join us next time when someone reviews something. Take care.